In the vast frozen plains of Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region's Junggar Basin, a miracle has been quietly unfolding. Once extinct in the wilderness, Przewalski's horses, the last surviving wild horses on Earth, are returning to their ancestral home.
After being released into the wild, the horses quickly regain their natural instincts. Within 6 months without human care, they become wary of people and will not allow anyone to approach.
From captivity to the wild, from careful nurturing to fierce independence, each horse carries a story of learning and freedom.
从小开始养大了，然后你把放到这个野外，觉得可能舍不得一点。
The landscapes they move across. I raised these wild horses from the time they were born. Sending them into the wild always made me anxious. I worried whether they could adapt, whether they would find enough food and water. In the cold, could they survive a harsh winter? Would they be safe if wolves attacked?
Decades of patient care, tireless observation, and scientific breeding have brought Przewalski's horses back from the brink.
在看到野马回到大自然的一瞬间，或者是有的时候。
When I see them running freely on the steppe or drinking water at a water hole not far from us, that's when I truly understand the meaning of what we've done.
Welcome to Footprints. I'm Bob Jones. In this episode, we follow the footsteps of life itself, where a lost species finds its way home across the steppe, where wild hearts beat again, and where the quiet devotion of guardians of the wild turns hope into reality. In the Junggar Basin of northwest China's Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, winter arrives early. The temperatures drop below freezing, and winds sweep across the open land, carrying the scent of frost and dry grass. In the northeastern reaches of the Junggar Basin lies the Kala Mai Li Nature Reserve. With few visible signs of human presence, it has become a sanctuary for wildlife. Across the vast steppe, small groups of horses gallop freely, their hooves striking the frozen ground and sending clouds of dust into the air, a scene that would have been impossible to witness just 2 decades ago. Not tall, but powerfully built, these horses are distinguished by broad jaws, thick necks, and sandy coats, marked by a dark dorsal stripe, their forms closer to prehistoric cave paintings. Known as Przewalski's horses, the world's last surviving wild horse species, they have roamed the earth for 60 million years and survived near extinction. Once commonly seen in what is now China, Kazakhstan, and Mongolia, the horses had disappeared from China entirely by the 1970s due to illegal hunting, expanding industrial development, and natural disasters. In 1985, China reintroduced 11 Przewalski's horses to the Xinjiang region from Germany and the United Kingdom. With the establishment of the Xinjiang Wild Horse Breeding and Research Center that year, the nation began a long-term effort to restore this once-vanished wild horse species. After more than 4 decades of sustained work, the population has steadily recovered. Since 2001, selected horses have been released from the Breeding and Research Center into the Kala Mai Li Nature Reserve, gradually rebuilding a self-sustaining population in the wild. Living in the wild is a constant challenge for the Przewalski's horses, as most of them were born and raised under human care before being released. Water, scarce during the summer months, becomes more available in winter, as snow blankets the steppe. Food, however, is far harder to secure in the cold. Competition between stallions for the right to reproduce can also turn violent and, at times, fatal. To reduce these risks, rangers monitor the horses' daily lives. They intervene only when necessary, providing supplemental food and water during extreme weather and calling in veterinarians when injuries or illnesses threaten the animal's survival. Zhang Yanbao has observed the horses in the reserve for 7 years since the first release in 2001.
If we find a horse in the wild that has become weak, we give it some food and water to help it pull through. Once it recovers, we step back and let it be. Winter can be especially hard for Przewalski's horses. If there's little snowfall, water sources may freeze, so we bring them water. But when snowfall is heavy, grass can be buried under the snow. In that case, they usually have enough water but can't find food, so we provide them with grass.
Przewalski's horses live in clearly defined family groups, typically made up of several mares, their offspring, and a single adult stallion. Within each herd, the mare with the strongest memory and judgment often assumes leadership, guiding the group through familiar routes in search of food and water. In return for her role, she enjoys priority in reproduction. The stallion's role, by contrast, is to protect the group from rival males. Constantly alert, he positions himself at the edges or rear of the herd, watching for intruders and keeping the mares from straying. Males that have not yet secured a herd may form bachelor groups or wander alone, waiting for an opportunity to challenge and replace an established stallion.
The horse at the front, followed closely by her offspring and the rest of the group, is usually the lead mare. She holds real authority. The routes they take in search of food and water are fixed. They walk the same paths year after year, and over time, those paths become clearly marked. A stallion's position is never secure. He can be challenged and replaced more than once in a single breeding season. The mares, however, are much more stable and often stay with the same group for years.
Zhang says the stallions react very differently after being defeated and driven out of the herd. At the Breeding and Research Center, horses are identified by their order of birth, number 1, number 2, and so on. In their struggles for dominance, some stallions have left lasting impressions when fighting for the herd.
Stallions have distinct personalities. I remember number 11 behaved like a true leader, calm and confident, with a strong presence. His successor, number 49, was more controlling. After taking over, he restricted the herd's movement and wouldn't allow the mares to go to the areas the previous stallion had used. Most defeated stallions move on, but others simply can't let go. They linger around the herd and keep challenging the new stallion whenever they recover their strength. Those repeated fights can be dangerous. Some end with fractures or serious wounds.
When rangers spot a Przewalski's horse in poor condition and cannot recover on its own, they call a veterinarian from the Center for Medical Assistance. Entamahan Ajanhan, senior veterinarian at the center since 1998, performs health checks on newborn foals and provides treatment for horses, both at the center and after they are released into the wild. One particularly urgent case in 2016 still makes him sweat when he recalls it. He raced against time to save a stallion whose life hung in the balance after a brutal fight.
两个公马互相见面以后打架，把一个公马的生殖器咬坏了。
Two stallions fought fiercely, and one bit the other's genitals. The wound became infected. When we arrived, he couldn't even walk. After administering anesthesia, I removed the infected tissue and stitched the wound. We treated him with topical medication on the wound, anti-inflammatory injections and painkillers for 10 days. Thankfully, the stallion survived and still has the ability to reproduce.
For each release, horses are carefully selected based on their health, age, and genetic diversity, ensuring bloodlines are as distant as possible. To improve their chances of survival, the horses first undergo a transitional period of about 6 months to 1 year in a 20 square kilometer loose housing area within the nature reserve. This stage prepares them for life on their own in the wild. During this time, the horses gradually learned to find food and water and adapt to life without human care. At the Breeding and Research Center, they are fed twice a day. In the loose housing area, however, they receive a meal only once every 3 to 5 days, encouraging them to rely on their own instincts to survive. Animal science engineer Shui Jiannan explains that loose housing also helps the horses become familiar with their future environment.
马是一个感应能力特别强，它大概能够知道它方圆多少公里内有水。
Horses have very keen senses. Even before leaving the enclosure, they can detect where grass and water are more abundant outside. They also seem to know how far they'll need to travel to reach those places. That awareness is crucial for their survival.
待的那个半年左右，那个时间是最重要的。
The loose housing area also serves as a refuge and a place of familiarity. Zhang Yanbao explains that horses, once accustomed to human care, may return for help or simply revisit the life they once knew, while those born in the wild rarely approach humans.
临时的圈舍门是全部打开的，让它自由进出。
The gate of our loose housing area in the nature reserve is always open for any wild horse that wants to come back. Horses have an incredible sense of direction, and scientists still haven't figured out how they do it. 3-year-old stallions, when they were just forced to leave their herds, often return to the enclosure. It's a smart survival strategy, as they might encounter other lone stallions and sometimes form a new bachelor herd.
The current release process is built on hard-earned experience. In 2001, during the first release, nearly 30 Przewalski's horses were sent directly into the wild without any prior preparation. 3 of them died, unable to cope with the sudden change. The loss was devastating for the professionals at the Breeding and Research Center. From that lesson, the 6 to 1 year transitional period was introduced, giving horses time to develop essential survival skills before release. Although tragedy struck during the first release, rangers witnessed the strong bonds within the herds, with these horses caring for one another much like a human family. At that time, a mare and her 3 offspring were set free together. The adult mare did not survive the harsh winter. Her death left behind 3 young horses, 2 sisters and a younger brother, who formed an even tighter tie in her absence. Normally, when young stallions reach around 3 years old and begin showing courtship behavior, they are driven out by the dominant stallion by severe attack. The youngest brother, number 147, was an exception.
有感动，又觉得这个不可思议，我当时感觉。13号就因为各种原因。
I was deeply moved and honestly surprised. I thought the young stallion would be in danger after losing his mother, but his 2 older sisters stepped in. Once a young male matures, the dominant stallion usually begins to see him as a rival, biting or kicking him out of the herd. Number 147, however, remained with the group until he was over 4 years old. His sisters shielded him whenever conflicts arose and kept him close. With their support, the young stallion grew strong and healthy. In the same year, he was finally driven from the herd. He succeeded in forming one of his own herd with mares, which was a remarkable achievement.
The ranger's job is far from easy. Tracking wild horses is challenging as the animals are always on the move, and danger lurks everywhere. The reserve is home to many wild animals, including wolves. Zhang says it's normal for rangers to work in pairs so they can look out for each other and make decisions together when emergencies arise. In the early 2000s, the reserve had no CCTV cameras, and digital communications were unreliable. Rangers didn't usually fear wolves while driving along the trails. But if a car broke down and a pack drew near, even an experienced ranger like Zhang would feel his nerves spike. Once, it was 4 in the afternoon when Zhang's vehicle broke down. His partner and Zhang couldn't fix it, and they knew they had to head out on foot at once. Otherwise, they would be stuck in the reserve overnight. By that time, most herdsmen had moved out and only a few remained inside. Trapped in a vast, sparsely populated reserve, full of hidden predators, could the rangers make it to safety?
That day, we were under enormous pressure and fear. It was summer, so the sun didn't set until 10 o'clock at night. We ran for 7 hours straight, without resting or drinking water. I never imagined I could run for so long. Finally, around 11, we reached the home of a herdsman. They gave us food and water, and we rested briefly before starting off again. After another hour or two, we finally made it out of the reserve. Later, I realized just how much a person can endure when faced with real danger.
At present, technology plays a crucial role in monitoring wildlife across the reserve. Shui Jiannan says they use CCTV cameras, unmanned aerial vehicles, thermal cameras, and GPS-enabled collars to track the wild horses.
We use a variety of methods to monitor the wild animals here, from large species like Przewalski's horses to smaller ones like eagles. We fit the lead mares with collars equipped with the Beidou satellite navigation system, which allows us to see where the herd spends most of its time. For each endangered animal, we provide customized monitoring devices or implanted chips. At water holes, we set up thermal cameras, and in other locations, we place camera traps. Based on our experience, we know where the wild horses usually roam, so we drive to those areas and use drones to observe them from above when necessary.
Entamahan Ajanhan has observed that the coat color of Przewalski's horses living in the wild gradually differs from those still under human care. Their coats adapt to the land they inhabit.
Przewalski's horses that have lived in the wild for a long time develop darker coats after being released, which helps them blend into their surroundings. Horses living mainly in desert areas often look different from those in the Gobi, with coat colors that reflect the landscapes they move across.
Entamahan Ajanhan worked closely with the team to help the wild horses begin their independent lives. He performed health checks on many of them at birth and provided treatment whenever they fell ill. He recalls a night in 1999 when a mare went into labor. He noticed the newborn foal couldn't open its eyes. Carefully, he helped the tiny horse, but the mare became protective and alert. She bit and kicked him. Entamahan had to scramble over the rail to avoid injury. 3 or 4 years later, Entamahan participated in the teams releasing that same mare into the wild. As they prepared to let her go, it seemed she recognized him. She lingered near the car, reluctant to leave, as if remembering the man who once saved her child. The moment left him deeply moved. The veterinarian says opening the cage and releasing the wild horses in nature always stirs up complicated emotions.
I raised these wild horses from the time they were born. Sending them into the wild always made me anxious. I worried whether they could adapt, whether they would find enough food and water. In the cold, could they survive a harsh winter? Would they be safe if wolves attacked? But at the same time, they are returning to their true home. It's such a relief seeing them run freely across the steppe.
Coaching the wild horses to develop living skills is crucial, and providing a suitable habitat is significant as well. Covering more than 14,000 square kilometers, the Kalamaili Nature Reserve is about 1.5 times the size of Yellowstone National Park, spanning Gobi and desert landscapes. Born into a herdsman family, Entamahan Ajanhan grew up surrounded by horses. From his parents, he learned practical knowledge of raising them and developed an instinctive understanding of what wild horses need to survive. With that background, he accompanied teams of experts and university professors during field visits to evaluate whether the Kalamaili Nature Reserve could support the return of Przewalski's horses.
第一个我们就是野马野放的情况，就是第一个它有植被的情况。
We looked at whether the land was suitable for the wild horses, including its vegetation, whether there was enough food, reliable water sources, and places where the horses could take shelter.
Xinjiang is rich in natural resources such as coal, oil, and gold, and the vast Kalamaili region was once dotted with oil wells and mining sites. To better protect the wild horses and restore their habitat, more than 280 oil wells had been sealed, and the land returned to grassland by the end of 2018. Over the past 25 years, since the first release in 2001, about 180 Przewalski's horses raised under human care have been returned to the wild in Xinjiang. Among them, 30 horses are currently living in loose housing within the Kalamaili Nature Reserve, undergoing a transition period to adapt to life in the wild. They are expected to be released into the reserve in March this year. Currently, China's total population of Przewalski's horses exceeds 900, accounting for about 1/3 of the global population. Of these, roughly 560 live in Xinjiang, both in captivity and in the wild. Xinjiang has become one of China's most important breeding bases, supplying horses to reintroduction programs in regions such as Gansu Province, Inner Mongolia, and the Ningxia Hui Autonomous Region. From extinction in the wild to gradual recovery, what now feels almost unreal was once deeply uncertain. In 1985, when the Xinjiang Wild Horse Breeding and Research Center was first established, professionals didn't really have experience of raising Przewalski's horses. Zhang Yanbao, one of the center's longest-serving staff members, recalls that a team member was always assigned to monitor the horses throughout the day, learning their habits and carefully observing their health. In the early days, their primary task was to keep the wild horses alive and reproduce.
马的每一件事情都放大到最大了，全部十分重视。
Our staff and animal experts paid close attention to everything and did our best to get it right. No one really had experience raising wild horses. We invited professors from a local university to teach us how to care for them scientifically. We ran 3 shifts a day to ensure that someone was always keeping an eye on them. If a horse showed any signs of discomfort and we couldn't deal with it, we contacted the experts immediately.
Through careful monitoring and examination of the horse's feces, the team determined the optimal diet, a mix of alfalfa, corn flour, carrots, bran, and a little salt. This recipe has been used ever since. Alfalfa is a nutrient-dense forage, rich in protein, energy, and calcium. Each wild horse requires about 10 kilograms a day, making a steady supply essential. Yet the Junggar Basin, with its saline alkali soil, was far from ideal for growing crops. After years of soil improvement, Entamahan Ajanhan says the team has now achieved self-sufficiency.
因为我们这个中心的这个现在的位置是土壤里面的盐的成分比较高。
Our land had a high salt content, which was the main challenge for planting alfalfa. We had to irrigate several times to reduce the salt, and we rotated different types of grasses each year. Today, we have more than 50 hectares dedicated to growing alfalfa.
大概有800多亩地。
In captivity, the most common health issues for Przewalski's horses are digestive disorders and parasites. Entamahan Ajanhan quickly identified areas that could be improved and offered his suggestions when he joined the center in 1998.
野马它的活动量不够，血液循环不足，吃的东西没消化过去。
If wild horses don't get enough exercise, their circulation is poor, which can lead to digestive problems. When I arrived, I recommended enlarging the colony houses and giving the horses more time to exercise. I also noticed that deworming was done too frequently, which could cause drug resistance. I suggested doing it just once a year, in December, during the coldest days. so the parasites die after falling to the ground with the feces. The strategy ensures that 95% of parasites are successfully removed during deworming.
现在可能到95%以上。
Eager to protect the horses, the team sometimes went a little overboard. In the bitter winters of Xinjiang, they worried that Przewalski's horses might freeze at night, so they built heated colony houses to keep them warm. But Zhang Yanbao recalls that the extra protection turned out to be unnecessary. As long as the horses were well fed, they tolerated the cold with ease. That realization became an important lesson. It showed the team that Przewalski's horses were far tougher than they had imagined, fully capable of surviving the harsh environment as long as their basic needs were met. The experience strengthened the center's confidence and reinforced its guiding principle from the very beginning. The horses were never meant to be domesticated, but eventually returned to the wild. With that goal in mind, the center has rules discouraging staff from forming close bonds with the horses, ensuring they retain their natural wariness and wild instincts.
野马跟那个家马的区别就在这儿，表面上看起来它很温和，因为实际上它的。
Our wild horses are different from the domestic ones. From a distance, they may appear calm, but in reality, they are highly alert and can be aggressive. When someone enters their territory, they issue sharp snores and stamp their hooves as warning signals. They're especially sensitive to ropes, triggering an instinctive fear because they associate them with snakes. When people approach carrying ropes, the horses may charge. This often happens when we need to provide medical treatment.
Today, the basic tasks of caring for and reproducing Przewalski's horses are well established. The greater challenge now lies in scientific breeding, maintaining genetic diversity, and avoiding inbreeding as the population grows. Between 1985 and 2005, the center introduced 24 Przewalski's horses from countries including the United States, the United Kingdom, and Germany. Bringing in new bloodlines, particularly stallions, played a crucial role in reducing genetic relatedness within the captive population. At present, the center manages around 80 horses, organized into 6 breeding herds. Each herd typically consists of 1 stallion and several mares that are not closely related as much as possible. In the early years, staff relied on written records to track the family relationships of the individual horses. Today, breeding decisions are guided by molecular science. Using DNA extracted from hair or fecal samples, the center works with a local university to conduct genetic analysis and build a detailed lineage database. Animal science engineer Shui Jiannan explains that breeding pairs are selected based on the coefficient of relatedness, a measure of genetic closeness between 2 individuals. Over time, the center has reduced this figure from around 0.2 to 0.01 or lower, ensuring that breeding pairs share no close genetic ties within 3 generations.
The
coefficient of relatedness between 4 siblings is 0.25. In the early days, our priority was to increase numbers quickly, so genetic relatedness was higher. Now that the population is stable, our focus has shifted to scientific breeding, reducing genetic risks and ensuring that foals are born healthy, without defects or stillbirths.
Currently, to further increase genetic diversity, the team is developing artificial insemination techniques which could allow them to introduce new bloodlines without transporting live horses overseas, reducing both cost and logistical challenges.
We're studying procedures that are safe and stress-free for the horses during both semen collection and insemination. And next, we'll work on how to transport semen over long distances.
Across the vast Junggar Basin, wild horses move like living echoes of the past. They search for food and water, navigate the harsh cold, and assert their place within the herds. Their hooves stir the dust of the open steppe, Their manes ripple in the wind, and every gallop and trot is a testament to freedom. After decades of human care and tireless effort, the Przewalski's horses have returned, reclaiming the land that has always been their home. For Shui Jian-nan, moments like these give meaning to years of quiet work behind the scenes.
养它，我们能够把它平安的养大，再加上我们保护区的这个环境保护。
Raising Przewalski's horses, releasing them into the wild, protecting the reserve, of course, these things are meaningful. But sometimes it's hard for me to put that feeling into words. But when I see them running freely on the steppe or drinking water at a water hole not far from us, that's when I truly understand the meaning of what we've done. Our greatest dream now is that one day our breeding and research center will no longer need to exist, and Przewalski's horses will no longer be endangered. That will be the moment we know our mission is complete and that we have done our job well.
Across China, similar conservation projects are slowly and often gradually reshaping damaged landscapes. Often slow and unseen, this work is changing ecosystems not through spectacle, but through persistence. With that, we reach the end of this episode of Footprints. If you're interested in hearing the lives of ordinary but incredible people in China, follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Just key in Footprints and you can find more stories anytime, anywhere. We hope to see you next time. Until then, bye for now.